afternoon. Welcome to Family Health Matters. We have a special episode today because I'm normally on Thursdays from 3 to 3:30 with Family Health Matters on Awesome Radio 106.9. But today we are here Wednesday at 5 o'clock for a special broadcast. And what we're going to be talking about today is we're having a conversation about mental health. And I have a special guest with me. She's been here before, but she's my special guest on today. I have Kimberly Riddick. She's a counselor. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome. And
Glad
we
to
are
be
live
back.
in the studio today. So, welcome, Kim. She is a counselor at one of our local community colleges. She is in school now, working on her licensure to get her all her hours that she needs to become a licensed uh, therapist. I want to make
Yes.
sure I do it right. I
Yes.
don't want to give you nothing too fast.
Right. I appreciate it.
But we know you're going to do just fine. And
Yes,
we're so
ma'am.
glad to have you here in the studio to talk with us on today. And again, I want to just make sure that everybody knows that Family Health Matters is normally on Thursdays from 3 to 3:30. So join us on Thursdays from 3 to 3:30. But listen in today because we have some really, really good information
Yes.
that we want to share. And so, Kim, let's just jump off and get started because we don't want to
Sure.
run out of time because we've got some
Right.
really good information that we, like I said, that we want to share on today. Mental health is something that we are hearing so much about in our
Mm-hmm.
communities and everyday life and talking about self care because there's so much going on in this world as a whole.
Yes. Oh,
And
yeah.
we need to know that we need to take care of ourselves and we need to understand that you cannot take care of anybody else until you take care of yourself first.
Right.
So we're going to start off. I'm going to jump in, let you jump in. So, Kim, tell us the definition of what mental health really is. Tell us about mental health and what it is and how would you define it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually read a definition because I feel it's important that I incorporate everything. And this definition is actually from Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and they define mental health as including our emotional, physical, psychological, social well-being. It impacts how we think, how we feel, and helps determine how we handle stress and relate to others. So think about relationships and how we make our choices. So really mental health is all encompassing. Sometimes we try to compartmentalize,
Mm.
but it's impossible to do that effectively. Mental health includes everything.
Okay,
Everything.
good, good. So it's not just, I like the way you said it. We can't departmentalize it because
Right.
it's always there. It affects us
Hmm.
physically, mentally, socially, spiritually.
Yes.
All of those play a part of our mental health. And
Absolutely.
so with that being said, uh, I hear that, mental health, we say it's every day, but isn't there a national health day or something? Tell us about that before we talk about the barriers.
Yes. So World Mental Health Day is actually annually in October. So October 10th. I like to remember it as 10/10.
Ah, okay,
Yes,
good,
yes.
good.
And then Mental Health Awareness Month is May. So every year, just a whole month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay. So 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 we got those 2 days out. So now you're like October, yeah. But
Yes,
mental health is every day.
every day.
And based on your definition, we need to take care of ourselves every day.
Every day.
So I know that people have stigmas and have different thoughts about mental health and why they don't want to seek mental health. So tell us about some barriers that may affect the care or access to care for mental health.
Yeah, so there's a number of barriers, some of them being physical and some of them being mindsets. So we have desire to receive care, and I can kind of list some and then we can get into some conversation about them. But
Okay.
desire to receive care, lack of anonymity when seeking treatment. So that's having that privacy and anonymity. That's a fear that people have sometimes. Will this really be confidential? Will it really be anonymous? Shortages of mental health workplace professionals, lack of culturally competent care, financial resources, lack of affordability, lack of access via transportation. Those are six big. I'm sure there's other barriers, but
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
six big ones.
Okay. Because when I was, doing some research about that,
Hmm.
those were those six that I saw as well. So
Okay.
let's talk a little bit more about the
Yes.
desire to receive care.
Okay.
What actually does that pertain to? What does
Okay.
that entail? So we're gonna dig deeper into these six things.
Okay, so the desire to receive care can be a number of things. It can be a mindset because remember you actually just mentioned it. Stigma. There's still a lot of stigma. We've made a lot of strides, and even I believe coming out of the pandemic or going into the pandemic, that was one bright side or positive. I feel like during that time, people talked more about mental health. I think really people realized just how much mental health was impacted by day to day and how important mental health was during that time. So, a desire to seek care sometimes can come from the stigma. Individuals may feel like, and this is not the best term to use in terms of mental health, but I'm going to say it like people may be still out there saying, well, that's for crazy people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
crazy people go to therapy. But I tell people, no, therapy is for everyone. All of us have experienced some trauma, and even if you're in a good place right now in life, you can still go to therapy proactively to process things that you have or to plan out things that you have coming up and making sure that you don't have any trauma that's getting in the way of the blessings that you're about to receive. Because, that's the thing. Desire, so I'm passionate, so I kind of went in there, but
Oh, that's
desire to
good.
care, physical, I mean, it can be that lack of that stigma around it. And also, sometimes people don't realize that they need care. Sometimes people
Mm.
can be in denial that they need care. They can feel, and especially if you've lived in a state where you've had some mental health challenges for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can get normalize that without even realizing it. And so then when individuals that you love and they're trying to, gently urge you to, hey, you might want to see a professional, mental health professional. They may even want to help you find that person, but you may not have that desire. You may feel like it's not me. I'm fine. I don't need to see a mental health professional.
So how do you recognize when
Hmm.
that desire should be there? How do you
Hmm.
recognize that you need
To see.
mental health care or
Hmm.
to seek assistance? How do you recognize that?
Great question. So I think it comes a lot of different ways. I think some warning signs. Sometimes it comes from someone that you love, and you trust in your life, and they may just have a gentle conversation with you and say things like, hey, I've noticed that you've been going through a lot. Notice you haven't been yourself lately.
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes a good indicator. Sometimes internally, you just feel like something is off, and it doesn't mean. And I think sometimes even when people feel that, it can be some shame around that, like, oh my god, something is wrong with me. And that's not what I want as a mental health professional. That's not what I want people to go to. I want that to be the desire, that you determine that instead of going into shame, use that as the desire to, hey, I just need to see what's wrong with me. Because think about
Mm-hmm.
it, if you have a headache for a week straight, you want to see what's going on. So if internally you feel like your processing mentally is off, or you're just not yourself, you're extra irritable, you're having insomnia, or you're sleeping more, then those are the nudges, just like that headache, to check yourself out physically. Those are just a few of the nudges to check out, hey, maybe I have some things going on mentally. There's no need to have shame around it. Just seek a mental health professional.
Okay, that's really good. That's really good because, um, like you said, the headache, a persistent
Mm-hmm.
headache, may mean that there's an underlying cause.
Right.
When you look at your help looking healthy wise,
Mm-hmm.
then mentally, same thing. If I like the way you listed the things that may change you irritable,
Mm-hmm.
things that are not normal for you.
Right.
Okay.
Personality shifts that are not normal. That's the key right
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's
For
great.
you.
Well, do you really think that um, everybody sort of blames a lot on the pandemic? Everything happened, all these things happened with the pandemic. I know
Yeah.
it caused a lot of stress and different things that happened. But
Mm-hmm.
do you think mental health was just as prevalent before the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic
I
than
do.
it is now?
I absolutely do. I think it's like one of those things, like people say when you get money, people are like, oh, you changed. It's like, no, it just exposed what was already there. I think
Mm,
that's exactly what COVID did. Nothing really changed. I mean, now I will say I think COVID was an added
mm-hmm,
stressor,
right.
but I don't think that COVID was the only thing. I think things were already there, but during that time, because think about it, like people were sheltered in place. Some of the outlets that we had, like going to work, so we could overwork and work through problems, because that's sometimes a coping mechanism. Like we're stressed out, somebody passes away, we're like, I'm just gonna keep working, I'm gonna push through. But when that was some of those things that we hid behind were moved, then now it's like when you clear the room out, everything that's there is visible. You move the rug, all the dust is there,
Oh,
visible.
oh, that's good. That's a good comparison, and
Yeah.
that is absolutely true. I believe the same thing that the stress, the COVID brought a lot of additional stress,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it did expose, like you said,
Yes. Oh,
expose a lot
yes.
of different things. Okay, let's talk about number two.
Okay. So the second
Yeah,
barrier.
the
Okay.
second barrier. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, the
You're
second
fine. You're fine.
barrier.
So
Yeah.
lack of anonymity, that word is always funny to say when seeking treatment. So that is a big one, both internally sometimes. There's just a distrust of healthcare systems, mental health, and then you really got to think about when people are going into therapy, that is a very vulnerable space. Like you
Mm.
are, I like to say you're emotionally naked. Like not necessarily going into that first session. I mean, it might take time for you to really start peeling back those layers, but you are going into a space where you are emotionally naked. You're exposed. This is you and one person that you don't know. You may have gotten a referral, but you don't know this person. So you're going in sharing the innermost parts of your soul with somebody that you don't know. So sometimes that can play on people's head, kind of you get in your head about it and you wonder, because from the clinical side, from the side of being a clinician and a professional, I can tell you that by the code, ACA, or American Counseling Association Code of Ethics, we are bound to confidentiality. So anything
Mm-hmm.
that you say in a counseling session cannot leave the room. But that doesn't mean that people don't come into the room wondering, because someone may have had a bad experience in the past, or it just, you can, the mind is powerful, and that goes both ways. So you can
Yeah.
get in your head and think, okay, this person say they ain't gonna tell anything, but they really gonna not tell my business. So that's a big thing. And then especially when you look at, and not just in rural areas, but when you look at rural areas, you think about everybody know everybody, so they feel like they might get seen, like somebody can just see them walking into a therapist's office and be like, oh, okay, I always knew something was wrong with this person.
Uh-huh.
And so that can, that plays
Yeah.
on people with that lack of anonymity, because people really do want that to be, and it absolutely needs to be, a confidential, safe space.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Because in you minds do play your mind do
Mm-hmm.
play tricks on you, making you
Mm-hmm.
think, and somebody may not even be thinking that.
Right,
And so,
right.
how do you help somebody get beyond that
Hmm.
fear
Mm-hmm.
of what people may say if they find out? I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are so much bolder about it now, and which
Yes.
is great. I think it's just
Yes.
absolutely wonderful, because I do tell
Mm-hmm.
people that, even with church people, my
Mm-hmm.
church people, that you tell them, it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The shame comes is when you don't seek help.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so it's nothing to be ashamed of if
Mm-hmm.
you know that you're at a point that you need something additional to prayer and
Mm-hmm.
fasting and reading the
Absolutely.
word and your faith and
Mm-hmm.
your pastor, and you
Mm-hmm.
need something else. You need a neutral person
Right.
that
Mm-hmm.
that helps you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
how else do you think that would help, or help you somebody move from that being embarrassed?
Yes, you said a mouthful right there. And I think now that people are more bold and open, I think that's starting to help people, just hearing that, that people are going to therapy and they're talking about it. I think that it, because sometimes, like, especially when you hear like celebrities talking about it, I think some of that is helping people. Some of it is like praying, encouraging people, educating people. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing, because I feel like it's a combination of things. And I love that you touched on with people within faith communities, because that's one I'm very passionate about. Like Jesus and therapy are like the perfect combination. Like that is a-okay, because we talk about, just pray about it, and I believe in the power of prayer. I know we believe in the power of prayer.
Yes.
And I also tell people, well, the same, take that, because there's a scripture, God cares about every part of us. So I know
Uh-huh.
I paraphrase, but So take that concern to him as well. He has gifted individuals that are graced and anointed to carry out the ministry of therapy, counseling. So when you come to these individuals, you have to trust him with that part of you too. If you are a believer in God, you have to trust that you can talk to him about that, and he, no shame, no condemnation, he'll drop in your spirit who to talk to about it, and they can either point you to the person, or they might be the person that you need to connect with for service, mental health service.
That's good. That's good. And you mentioned before about the first appointment that you have, and then as you move through, the layers begin to share.
Yes.
So I think it's important that doing that first session is the build of trust.
Yes.
That if you want those layers to start shedding, you have to have that trust. So and as I tell people from the clinician part as a nurse, that if you have a primary care provider who you cannot trust, you need to find somebody else.
Absolutely.
And that's okay. And that's okay.
Get
Because
somebody
some
else to
people
do it.
feels like they, well, I started, so I have to stay with that person.
Right.
So as a professional, you need to encourage people that if it's not a good fit, you need to move on. That's right, move on. You need, because you got to be comfortable, and you got to know that if you're going to go see somebody for anything, physical or mentally, that if you don't trust them, you're not going to open up, and you're going to leave the same way you came.
Exactly. That's going to stunt the process. I like to tell people, because I like practical analogies, I'm like, finding a therapist can be like dating. Like, you don't have to, when you're going out on dates, getting to know people, you're collecting data. You don't have to lock in until you all get to that point of making a commitment. But then, even if it's like, okay, we're going out on dates now, okay, we're in a relationship, but if we discover it's not working, then, we can depart. So that's kind of like with therapy. Like, you might have to date. And when I say not literally date your therapist, do not do that. But like, you might have to try, go to therapy sessions with different therapists. Like, don't be afraid of that. Don't go in, you want the first person to be great. Yeah. And be a fit. But if it's not, don't be afraid to switch it up.
Right. Absolutely. So I think that's a very good point to walk away with as being comfortable with whoever you decide that, will be there for you, that you've got to trust them. And number 3, the barrier for number 3, the shortage. Okay.
Yes. So that is another, they're all big ones. I'll say that's another big one. So shortages of mental health workplace professionals. So you can search on different sites like Psychology Today to find professionals. Sometimes, and I will say one thing that the pandemic has helped with this, there's more access now, because it used to be, it was kind of like the telehealth was not even really a thing. Like, the only way to get services officially, I guess, because there's other ways that outlets that people have that become therapy, but the only way to connect with a therapist at one point, or the main way I should say, was being in their office sitting on the couch. Well, now therapy looks different. You can have a telehealth therapist, so you can be in Eastern North Carolina, but you have access to therapists in Western North Carolina. So that does open up your options.
Yeah, that lets you know that that person don't live next door to you.
Yeah, right. So that helps with that. You're not going to just go to the store and see them, because they live across the state.
Right.
So that helps a little bit with that shortage. But, that's still, sometimes it's just people, sometimes it's not, you can be looking for, and this kind of goes into the 4th barrier.
Yeah.
You can be looking for a particular therapist, or like you want to see somebody that looks like you. You want, if you're a person of color, you want a person of color. And that's not always the case, but that is sometimes what you look for, because you want to make sure that this person can connect, that they have some understanding of your cultural experiences, because the things that you're going to talk about in the therapy sessions, it may translate different if that person doesn't have some understanding of your cultural background.
Yeah, and age-wise too.
Yes.
So that plays a big decision process too, age-wise, when looking at who you're gonna when you're trying to decide on somebody. Yeah, and you touched on the culture competence, and it realistically, there's not a lot of therapists out there of color. There is an increase in number.
Yes.
Yeah, there is an increase in number. So is there a particular place that you can go to do you, as far as a resource that
Mm-hmm.
has that, a therapist of color, is that legal to
Yes.
be able to do that? I know it's
No, no, it's a thing. It's a thing. So, I hope I'm saying these websites right. Therapy for Black girls is one website, and then for men. Now, I don't want to misquote this one, but I think it's similar. It's Therapy for Black Men. It's something very similar. I don't know if we can maybe put a note. I can share these links with you to put them. But yes, there are
okay.
websites that you can go to look for clinicians of color.
Yeah, and I know you said too earlier. You
Mm-hmm.
said that you could always go on the internet and look,
Mm-hmm.
and there should be information about different
Mm-hmm.
practices up there, and
Yes.
always I guess references. Your primary care provider can always
Mm-hmm.
make a reference
Mm-hmm.
for you as far as
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a referral,
Right.
as a referral.
And
Yeah.
friends can be awesome references too, because friends are some people that we have some of our most intimate conversations with. So we already have that trust built up. And so, if we even share with them, hey, I'm looking for a therapist. Do you know anybody? That's actually how I started therapy. Was a friend referred me to, well, we were having a general conversation, and then it just went there, and she ended up referring me to a great therapist. So
Okay.
friends can
Yeah.
be a good,
Friends could
never
be.
underestimate the power of a good friendship. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and and even and this is a little bit off on self care.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about your friends people that you have around you too.
Right.
You need to pull those people in that can be
Mm-hmm.
supportive of you
Mm-hmm.
and not put you down for actually looking for a therapist. That's just
Right.
like somebody encouraging, and this goes back to my clinician piece as a nurse. Back
Mm-hmm.
to people encouraging you go get your annual checkups.
Right.
Those
Mm-hmm.
physical things that you need to
Mm-hmm.
do. You need people around you that's going to encourage you and motivate you to go
Mm-hmm.
take care of yourself, not only physically but
Yes.
mentally as well.
Yes. Get you
Okay.
some friends that care about you holistically.
Ah, well said. Well said. Well said.
Care about everything.
And those are hard to find, but they
Right.
are out there.
Right. They are out there.
When you find one, then you need to take care of
Yeah.
them
Keep rocking
and
with
take
them.
care of each other. Yes,
Yes.
yes. Number 5, affordability of care.
Okay. Here I go again. I was like, that's a big one, but it really is. It really is because
This is a conversation.
right,
We're
right,
having a
right,
conversation.
right. That's a big one. So it really is because people, and some of it again can be in your mind. You can be like, I don't feel like I can afford therapy, but you have to start searching because there are different options out there. Now, I mean, sometimes individuals don't have insurance, and so you're like, okay, well, I can't afford for out of pocket services. But just do, I would say to that, do your research, because some clinicians offer sliding scale fees. So that's and I don't want to butcher how I explain this, but that sometimes those that can be a lower cost than what like a normal rate would be. So that's a good
Oh.
way to put that, a good practical way to put that. If you work a job where you have benefits, look into, like, you get that card with your insurance, look into the copays, look into what your insurance covers. Also, your job may offer an employee assistance program, and through that, they have a network of mental health practitioners. So you can look into that. Right now, I hope I can say this on air. I was gonna say the state health plan. It's I know certain. I can speak for myself. I was like, there's no copay for therapy right now. I don't know how long that'll last, but
Yeah.
like, just that's why I say, like, do your research, because is affordability a barrier? Absolutely, because there are people, and especially some of the research that I was looking at in rural areas, that affordability is, it's layers to it, because you live in a rural community, you already don't have a lot of access, and then you might have to drive, or you might not even have good internet access for telehealth, so then you might have to drive outside, at least 30 minutes. But then, do you have reliable transportation? So there are real barriers, but
Mm-hmm.
just do your research, persist. If you're a person of faith, pray about it, because doors can open that you don't expect. So just, be persistent in not accepting that, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to afford it. Look into that. Don't accept that off guard, off gate. Just look into that.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Mm-hmm.
good. Instead of sitting home saying, I
Yeah.
can't do this. And then I think too, your resource again goes back to your primary care provider.
Mm-hmm.
Your nurse
Mm-hmm.
practitioner, whoever you see,
Mm-hmm.
they can give you some directions as well.
Absolutely. And yet never underestimate like your primary caregiver, like you said, because they can definitely refer you. They can definitely give you some resources and tips as well.
And you touched on this last one a little bit because, girl, we're running out of time. Transportation to care,
Okay.
and you touched on that a little bit, especially in the rural areas.
Yes. Yeah.
The being able to afford to get to the appointment that you finally
Mhm.
got.
Mhm.
The being able to. Anything else you need to add on that?
Um. Not really. I think I kind of touched on that in the last one. Definitely. And I just think about I grew up in a rural area. So like I know the struggle of like living 20, 30 minutes from um doctors of offices, or from, especially from specialists, like or mental health providers, or even the grocery store. So it is
Well,
very
20, 30 minutes, girl. It's 45 minutes to an hour sometimes.
and that, right, that part,
Yeah,
yeah. So I know that that is a big barrier in rural areas, and I continue to say just persist, like
hmm
that quote, nevertheless she persisted, nevertheless he persisted, like just continue to, don't accept the barriers, because in anything you do it's always going to be a barrier there.
hmm
But you, and when you really want something, you're also going to persist to try to find out how to make it happen. So it's the same with our needs. When we, and I think some of that also comes to peeling those layers back, destigmatizing it. So like if
hmm
we're not shaming ourselves for knowing that we need it, or that we are at a place where we want to seek it, then maybe we'll seek it more actively, and we won't just accept that a barrier means I can't do it. It's like, okay, well, can I go around it? Can I go over it? Can I go under it? What can I do to figure out, how this doesn't have to be a barrier in my life?
Absolutely. Well, you just summed that up. All of our barriers that we talked about, you summed that up very well, very well. Because there should not be an excuse. You
Yeah.
should not have an excuse. And if you recognize that there is a barrier,
Mhm.
then to be persistent to figure out ways
Mhm.
to do that. Because we
Mhm.
want to make sure that everybody has what they need to
Right.
survive in this
Right.
world today.
Right.
And the barriers, like you said, is always going to be something there,
Always.
but
Mhm.
it depends on how bad you want it.
Right.
and
Mhm.
and seeking help and asking
Mhm.
friends, because you never know, that friend may have that solution for you.
Mhm.
So if there was one thing that you could say really briefly,
Mhm. Very
like
briefly. Okay.
2 seconds,
Okay.
what would you say as we close this conversation?
um Take care of yourselves mentally, like that's very important. In 2 minutes, I don't want to keep going, but not
Okay, you
minutes,
got
not
2
2 minutes,
minutes.
not two
You
minutes,
got
so
two
I'm gonna leave it at that.
seconds.
Take care of yourself, because I can go in, but know that your mental health is just as important as the other aspects of health in your life.
All right. Thank you, Kim Reddick, for being here with us on
Yes.
today, having a conversation about mental health, because it is important that you take care of your mind, your body, your soul, your
Mhm.
spirit, all wrapped up in one, because we are the temple of the Holy Ghost, and He
Mhm.
wants us to be well, and
Mhm.
we want to be
Holistically.
well
Yeah.
holistically. Yes, get
Holistically.
that word in there, holistically. So thank you again for joining me today. This is Wendy Bridges. I'm your host on Family Health Matters, Awesome Radio 106.9
We are the
FM.
station that
Thank you for
brings you
joining us.
inspiration for the
Yes, yes.
family and
Pray
ministry
for the
teaching
family.
for
Thank you.
practical
Have a great
Christian
afternoon.
living. Awesome Radio.